My name is Sarah Jenkins. I'm 32 years old, and I'm a marketing strategist. The first thing I registered was the sterile, metallic tang in the air, a scent that clung to the thin hospital gown I was wearing. My head throbbed, a dull, persistent drumbeat behind my eyes, and a sharp pain radiated from my right side every time I tried to shift. A slow, insistent beeping came from a machine beside my bed. My eyes fluttered open to the muted light of a hospital room, and for a disorienting moment, I didn't know where I was or how I got there. Then I saw them, my parents, Eleanor and Richard, sitting stiffly in plastic chairs in the corner, their faces grim, their voices hushed but laced with a familiar tension. They weren't looking at me. They were looking at each other, and my father was running a hand through his thinning hair, muttering, "This is going to ruin everything." A cold dread, sharper than any physical pain, settled in my stomach. I knew, without needing to ask, that my sister, Chloe, was responsible for my being here. I also knew that my parents' primary concern wasn't my well-being, but the potential disruption to their carefully constructed world. I lay there, silent, my body aching, listening to them discuss the logistics of damage control, and a quiet resolve began to form. They wanted me to be quiet, to disappear, but this time, I wouldn't. This time, their insistence on silence would be the very thing that broke us apart, and I would finally find my voice. To understand how I ended up in that hospital bed, you need to understand the Jenkins family dynamic. From the outside, we were the picture of suburban success, a beautiful house in a tree-lined neighborhood, 2 daughters, parents involved in community leadership. My mother, Eleanor, was meticulous about appearances, from her perfectly coiffed hair to the pristine condition of our heirloom china. My father, Richard, a successful real estate developer, valued reputation above all else. Chloe, 2 years my junior, was always the fragile one, prone to dramatic outbursts, an artistic soul who struggled with the mundane realities of life. I, on the other hand, was the responsible one, the sensible older sister, always expected to be understanding and accommodating. This pattern started early. Chloe would throw a tantrum if she didn't get her way, and rather than discipline her, my parents would soothe her, then gently chide me to be the bigger sister and let it go. If Chloe broke something, she'd often blame me, or claim it was an accident, and my parents would never truly investigate. I remember vividly a time when Chloe, in a fit of pique over a spilled drink, chipped one of my grandmother's hand-painted porcelain plates from the good china set, the set only brought out for holidays and special occasions. It was a delicate, floral pattern, an heirloom. My mother found the chipped plate and, instead of asking Chloe, she looked at me with disappointment and said, "Sarah, you know how careful we need to be with these. You should have put it away properly." Chloe stood silently beside her, a faint, knowing smirk on her face. Even then, I understood. My parents would always protect Chloe, even at the cost of my truth. The most significant early incident that cemented this pattern, for me, was during my freshman year of college. I had saved diligently for my tuition, working part-time jobs all through high school. Chloe, then 18, had a brilliant idea for an online boutique that required a significant upfront investment. Without asking, she borrowed a substantial portion of my tuition money from our joint savings account, convinced she'd pay it back with her first big sale. Of course, the boutique failed spectacularly within months. When I confronted her, she cried, claiming she was a failure, that I was being mean. My parents stepped in, not to make Chloe accountable, but to smooth things over. "She's your sister, Sarah," my mother said, "she's going through a hard time. Just let it go." My father quietly transferred money to me, but it was from a loan he took out, not from Chloe's non-existent earnings. I had to take out extra student loans to cover the rest, feeling the weight of their unspoken expectation. Chloe's needs always superseded mine. Life continued in this vein. I built my career, found my own apartment, and cultivated my own friendships. Chloe drifted from one failed venture to another, always relying on my parents for financial bailouts and emotional support. When I announced my engagement to David, a kind, stable software engineer I'd met through work, I thought things might finally shift. David was everything Chloe wasn't: grounded, honest, and completely uninterested in drama. Our engagement party, held at my parents' house, was supposed to be a joyous occasion. But Chloe, after too many glasses of champagne, became openly hostile. She made snide remarks about David's boring job, tried to flirt with him at bar, and then, with a dramatic flourish, accidentally spilled an entire glass of red wine down the front of my cream-colored dress, blaming the crowd and my clumsiness. My parents, ever vigilant, quickly whisked me away to clean up, whispering, "She's just a bit over-emotional, darling. Don't let her spoil your day." The subtle message was clear: my happiness was secondary to Chloe's fragile state. A few months after the engagement, my parents called a family meeting to discuss their estate planning. I assumed it would be a straightforward conversation about their assets and wishes. Instead, it quickly became apparent that Chloe's special needs, her inability to hold a job, her constant financial crises, were a central focus. My father explained, with my mother nodding gravely, that Chloe would require a larger share of the inheritance to ensure her long-term stability. He spoke about how I was so capable and independent, implying I didn't need it as much. I tried to gently question the fairness of this, suggesting that perhaps Chloe might benefit from learning financial responsibility rather than being perpetually subsidized. My father's jaw tightened. "Sarah," he said, his voice low, "family harmony is paramount. We don't want any discord. This is our decision." The message was clear: question Chloe, question us, and you jeopardize your place in this family. The situation escalated dramatically when Chloe had another major financial meltdown and moved into my parents' guest house temporarily. Her temporary stay stretched into months. She ran up exorbitant bills, refused to look for work, and created a constant atmosphere of tension. Every visit to my parents became an exercise in navigating Chloe's latest demands or emotional outbursts. I tried to help, offering to review her resume, sending her job postings I thought she'd be good for, even suggesting a career counselor. She rebuffed every offer, claiming I was judging her and trying to control her life. She started actively sabotaging my visits, telling my parents I was stressing her out or making her feel inadequate just by being there. My parents, naturally, would then call me, asking me to be more sensitive to Chloe's feelings. One particular evening, about a week before I ended up in the hospital, I visited my parents for what I hoped would be a quiet dinner. I had just finished a particularly demanding project at work and was looking forward to a peaceful meal. Chloe was already there, agitated. She had overheard my mother mentioning that I had gently suggested Chloe might benefit from talking to a therapist to help her manage her emotions and find direction. The air in the dining room, usually filled with polite conversation, crackled with her barely contained fury. As we sat down at the table, a familiar tension settling over the good china plates, Chloe exploded. She accused me of trying to institutionalize her, of stealing her inheritance, of always trying to make her look bad. My parents, instead of reprimanding Chloe for her outburst, immediately turned to me. "Sarah," my mother pleaded, "please just calm down. Don't upset your sister." That was the moment the dam broke. I was tired of being blamed, tired of being the bigger sister. I finally retorted, "Mom, Dad, she just accused me of trying to steal from her. And you're telling me to calm down?" My words seemed to ignite something primal in Chloe. She screamed, "You always think you're so much better than me," and hurled a decorative ceramic vase from the mantelpiece across the room, shattering it against the wall near my head. My parents jumped up, but their focus was still on restraining Chloe, not protecting me. Chloe, now fully engulfed in a rage I had only seen glimpses of before, lunged at me. She shoved me with incredible force against the heavy antique armoire that stood in the dining room, the impact knocking the wind out of me. As I stumbled backward, she pushed me again, and I lost my footing, hitting my head sharply on the edge of a mahogany side table as I fell to the polished hardwood floor. Pain exploded behind my eyes, and for a moment the world went black. I vaguely registered a sharp, searing pain in my ribs, a muffled shout, and then nothing. When I truly regained consciousness in the hospital, the doctor was explaining that I had a moderate concussion and 2 fractured ribs. My parents were still there, looking distraught, but their distress was clearly about the situation, not my injuries. The doctor, a kind woman with tired eyes, asked if I wanted to report the incident. My mother immediately interjected, her voice strained. "It was a terrible accident, doctor. Chloe has been under a lot of stress. Sarah just fell." My father nodded vigorously. Lying in that bed, my head throbbing, my ribs aching, I finally saw it all with chilling clarity. My parents weren't just enabling Chloe, they were actively complicit in her abuse, prioritizing their carefully curated image and their own comfort over my safety and well-being. The cycle would never end unless I was the one to break it. I understood then that family harmony wasn't about love or mutual respect, it was about maintaining a fragile illusion, and I was no longer willing to be the silent sacrifice. I knew that speaking out would shatter their world, and mine, but I also knew I couldn't live with the lie anymore. My first call was to David. He rushed to the hospital, his face pale with worry, and listened patiently as I recounted everything. He didn't try to minimize it or tell me what I should do, he simply offered his unwavering support. "Whatever you decide, Sarah, I'm with you." His steady presence gave me the courage I needed. Before making my official statement, I had one more conversation with my parents. I asked them to come back to my room, claiming I wanted to understand what they wanted me to say. I subtly activated the voice recorder on my phone, placing it under my pillow. They launched into a rehearsed narrative about how Chloe was remorseful, how it was an isolated incident, how embarrassing it would be for the family if I pressed charges. My father even offered me a substantial sum of money, for your medical bills, of course, and a little extra for your trouble. "Just let this go, Sarah." He said it was a gesture of love, but it felt like a bribe. The memory of the chipped china plate, the blame shifted onto me, solidified my resolve. This wasn't about love, it was about control. When the police officer came back to take my official statement, my parents were in the room, hovering anxiously. Their eyes were fixed on me, a silent plea mixed with a simmering threat. But I looked past them, at the officer, and began to speak. I recounted the events of that evening, clearly and calmly, detailing Chloe's assault, the impact, the pain. I didn't embellish, but I didn't omit. I also briefly mentioned the history of Chloe's aggressive behavior and my parents' consistent pattern of enabling it. The officer listened, taking notes, occasionally asking for clarification. As I finished, my parents' faces were ashen. The moment the officer stepped out, my father, Richard, grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly tight. His face was a mask of fury, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "Sarah," he hissed, "what you just did, this is going to destroy our family. If you pursue this, if you speak another word about this to anyone outside this room, consider yourself cut off. Financially. Emotionally. You will get nothing. You will be out of our lives." My mother, Eleanor, stood beside him, her eyes cold, adding, "We won't have this shame brought upon us. Not by you." I looked at them, at the two people who were supposed to protect me, and felt a strange, liberating calm wash over me. The pain in my ribs, the ache in my head, suddenly felt distant. "Then I guess I'm cut off," I said, my voice steady, "because I'm done pretending this is okay." The aftermath was exactly as they had promised. Chloe was charged with assault. My parents, true to their word, refused to speak to me. They immediately changed their will, removing me entirely, and made sure I knew it through a terse email from their lawyer. They started spreading a narrative within our extended family and social circles that I was unstable and had betrayed my own family by fabricating a story to hurt my sister. Most of our relatives, who had always valued appearances above all else, sided with my parents, offering me pitying glances or outright condemnation. It was a painful, isolating time. I went through physical therapy for my ribs and counseling for the emotional trauma. David was my rock, attending every appointment, holding my hand through every difficult conversation. The court proceedings were grueling. Chloe, with my parents' considerable legal and financial backing, received a suspended sentence and mandatory anger management classes, largely due to a plea deal and her lawyer's portrayal of her as a victim of her own mental health struggles. It wasn't the justice I might have hoped for, but it was a public acknowledgement of her actions. The loss of my family, as I had known it, was a profound grief. There were days I questioned everything, days I missed the illusion of belonging. But slowly, as the weeks turned into months, a different feeling began to emerge: liberation. I realized the family harmony they demanded was a cage, and I had finally flown free. I started building a new life, a chosen family with David and a few loyal friends who saw through the facade. My relationship with David deepened, forged in the crucible of this crisis. I learned to trust my own judgment, to set boundaries, and to prioritize my own well-being. Months later, David and I were hosting a small dinner party in our own home, celebrating his promotion. He brought out a set of simple, sturdy ceramic plates, not delicate, hand-painted porcelain, but beautiful in their own earthy, resilient way. As I looked at them, I thought of my mother's good china, carefully preserved for special occasions, easily chipped, an emblem of a fragile, broken perfection. These plates, in contrast, felt real, substantial. They were for gathering, for sharing, for sustenance, not just for show. The silence from my parents was painful at first, but it became the quiet space where I finally learned to build something real.